there's been a lot of conversation, a lot across the country, here in our state, about technology and use in law enforcement. And I understand both sides completely. I totally get it. But I think sometimes what gets lost is the actual dialogue about what police departments are doing. And I'm not going to talk about any other agency except the Newport News Police Department. Why we invest in technology, why we use it, the benefits. We'll also talk about the concerns people have. But I think it's important oh, technology, it must be Big Brother. Oh, technology, and it's not really effective. Or oh, technology, it costs so much money. Or oh, technology, what? There's a reason. So I'll just kind of share a little bit of that today. Policing has evolved so much. I'll date myself in the last 30 years. And it's very different today than probably in the last, ever since the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. I have seen such sweeping changes in expectations and reform, if you will, policy changes and reviews, from everything to scrutinizing pursuits, uses of force, duty to intervene, different type of techniques that are no longer used in law enforcement, or that communities and individuals and groups want to know, do you use those? Review boards, if you will. Professionalism, what jurors want to see in a courtroom, and things that they expect. So, and just saying this, I have never before, I remember when I started 30 years ago and I took a test in Richmond, Virginia to become a police officer. There must have been like 80 people in the room. I was like, wow, I don't even know if I can get, and we don't see those individuals, that number of individuals applying to be police officers as much today. And I talked to chiefs here in the Hampton Roads area, and I talked to chiefs around the state, and even some of the friends that I have in other cities. And I think most chiefs will tell you that different generations, when I started, I wanted to be a police officer for 25 years. This is what I wanted to do, and I get a retirement and then either continue or do something different. But it was going to be a career for me, and I'm not so sure that individuals join law enforcement for that now. I'm not saying that, I'm not painting a broad brush and saying everyone. I'm not, no absolutes, but I'm just saying that I see a lot more individuals when we talk to them, or at least here in Newport News, that, oh, I'm going to try it out for a couple years and see if I like it, or I'm going to do this, then I'm going to go to the federal system, or I want to do this for 5 years and then do something else. I'm going to see if I like it. It's not the concrete. No, I'm going to be here for 25 years. Even when I interview those candidates that are getting ready to join the department before the academy starts, right? We have a final interview 101. We don't have some of those. I don't hear some of that long-term thought process. So, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's a different mindset to people who came into the academy or joined law enforcement at the time that I did in the early 90s, and maybe even before. So with that, and then some other things that have happened, we don't see as many people applying to be law enforcement officers, and we see people that are leaving the profession. So one of the things that I'll share with you, I appreciate and respect the men and women who do this profession, sworn and civilian both. And I don't just mean here in Newport News. I mean law enforcement around the country, in our state of Virginia and around the country. People who have a heart for other people, for things that they see, things that they miss, things that they're exposed to, and then a break, right? Traffic accidents where people don't walk away from, and children that are sexually assaulted, or issues that go along with sex trafficking, domestic violence type situations, people who suffer gunshot wounds, or God forbid, an individual who loses their life, gun violence, drug overdoses. Those things affect us, and I wish that I wish we never had to respond to those things. I wish people would never have to experience that. But that's just not the world we live in. So for people who are willing to do that day in and day out, to serve other people, they matter to me. So how do we do better in law enforcement, 21st century policing? So one of the things that we try to do is as the perception of law enforcement, we certainly have made mistakes in the past. Uh, I can tell you, though, for every video or every mistake that you see, I could show you 200 videos and things that get done right. They just don't get reported. I'm not trying to make any excuses. Mistakes that we make in this profession, we should be held accountable, and I think that's how we get better. And I get teased all the time, but I'll say it: we're better today than we were yesterday, and we better be better tomorrow than we are today. But I can tell you, with the advances in training are much more. Academies are much longer today than they were 30 years ago. There's much more in-depth training. There's a lot more focus on training and more intense training today than there was 30 years ago. And if you go back 40 or 50 years, when I talk to people who, they'd come and do 6-8 weeks and get it's just different. So with that also, as we've tried to put some things in perspective, with that also comes prosecution in court cases. So judges and juries and Commonwealth attorneys, one of the things you will always hear today: do you have a photograph? Where's the video footage? Where's the recording? What was caught on camera? Do we have this process recorded somewhere? It's no longer just the officer's word against the defendant's word, or the officer's word against someone else's word. There needs to be things to back that up. A perfect example of that is, how long now have departments across the country been using body-worn cameras? So here in Newport News, we were the first department in the state to outfit the police department fully in body-worn cameras. All officers have that, and we're even learned to use that in the academy, how we return the device on and every time we have an interaction or a conversation. And that allows us, one, to capture those incidents and situations, but it also allows us to capture digitally video and audio of an interaction or a situation. It helps us look at officers' interactions and do better. Maybe a show where we might want to work or train an officer to do it better in a particular circumstance. But we can also show citizens those interactions, whether it's with the use of force or confrontation, or a citizen says, this officer talked to me a certain way at a traffic stop. And we go back and look at that body-worn camera footage, and their perception is they were frustrated and the officer talked to them. But when you look at the body-worn footage, or you ask them to come in and allow them to look at it, oh, well, I didn't remember that. Or vice versa, that the officer did say something that was inappropriate or out of the way at that traffic stop, or whatever interaction it is. My point being that technology has greatly changed policing today in the 21st century. So how do we do better? So I just want to share a couple things that we're doing in the Newport News Police Department. Other department, I'm not comparing this to anyone else. I'm just talking about some of the things that we're doing as this conversation around technology continues to grow. And it's a good conversation to have. And with all things, right? With all things, there comes accountability and responsibility. And I'm an advocate of that. There should be. We don't just buy something and some new device or some new ability, some new piece of equipment, and just have at it. There are policies and procedures that are written that guide us in how we use that equipment, how we store information, and what we do with it. Time frames and time logs, and what was the reason. So if Kelly will help keep me on track, a couple of items we want to talk about today. I want to talk about ShotSpotter. So Kelly, if you'll just jot these down for me. So I want to talk about ShotSpotter. I want to talk about Real-Time Crime Center. I want to talk about license plate readers, what we call flock, but it's license plate readers. I want to talk about cameras, traffic cameras. I want to talk about schools and hospitals. And we'll probably end up with probably some drone as we talk, even going into the future. So those are a couple things that I want to just start with. We've already touched base on body-worn cameras, and so picture yourself in a courtroom or a news story, if you will, and as an officer is testifying, and being able to play that body-worn camera footage is very helpful to the prosecuting attorney, to the defense attorney, helpful to the judge, and particular to jurors who see what actually transpired. Is that better? So if you had a 5-minute recording, visual and audio of an incident, is that better, or is it better just the officer's testimony and the other individual's testimony? Because if we say that there's a benefit to having that audio visual, I'm not saying it should replace anything, but what I am saying is it's added to be able to see what actually occurred. It allows the officer to explain what was in his or her mind, or the individual who is on trial to explain what was going on in their mind. And does their recollection of what happened match what is in the video? And if it doesn't, to be able to explain why. And that's very, very important for a jury to see, right? So one of the reasons we went to the body-worn cameras, and more departments have, if not just about all, is because it captures the incident of what occurred. Now, we're not taking those body-worn cameras and we're not blasting it on social media. It's not anything about sharing or trying to expose someone or embarrass anyone. That's not what it's about. It's about capturing actual information that occurred that's used in an investigation or a court process or a citizen complaint or to provide in training. This is how we're seeing officers in our department respond when they approach a vehicle in a traffic stop. This is how we're seeing officers respond over handcuffing techniques. Is there something we can do better, right? And we use those videos. Here's an officer talking really good to someone and de-escalating a situation, calming a situation down. This is something we need to highlight and show other officers. So we can have an officer come in and talk about what they did and imagine that and being done. Or imagine an officer coming in and talking about how they handled a situation. Oh, and by the way, here's the video so you can actually see it. Putting those two together, I think, paints a better picture of what we're trying to do. So whether we're in an academy-type setting, roll call in our precincts, leadership-wise, rewarding good behavior, learning from mistakes, changing behavior, those body-worn cameras have been very beneficial to us. So some other things I want to talk about is camera systems. And we'll try to wrap it up with a little bit of cost. But when we talk about camera systems, there are areas in our community, red light cameras, if you will, which capture individuals who run through a traffic light, right? Now, we don't just place those red light cameras anywhere. And it's not about, let's try to pick up what someone's saying or looking inside a vehicle. But what we have through data and evidence-based is a number of accidents that occur. In what intersections, if you ask me, anybody can tell you, seems to be pedestrians that get struck on Jefferson Avenue right across from the food line in the center part of the city. Because individuals darting across 6 lanes of traffic, if you count both sides, that's where you get a lot of pedestrians hit. So up at Oster Point in Jefferson is an area where we have a lot of traffic accidents. It's a big intersection. And what we're trying to do is reduce accidents, reduce fatalities, reduce pedestrian accidents. So a red light camera is something that departments have used for a long time to capture individuals that blow through a red light. What caused that? Speeding type thing, right? So that is very beneficial from insurance companies when they come back and want to know, well, can you tell us what actually happened? Yeah, here is the footage. Criminal cases where someone is injured. So imagine if you were driving your new vehicle and you go through an intersection, you're driving, you have the green light, and someone hits you, right? You're injured. It's, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning. You're injured. There's no witnesses around, and one person says, I had the green light, and you who've been injured and your car damaged says, no, I had the green light. So we have two different parties, no witnesses. But camera footage can make it very, very clear of who had the red light and who didn't, who stopped at the stop sign and who didn't, how that happened. So that is just another example about using technology that we didn't have, 50, 60 years ago. This person said he had the green light, so we're going to have to let the courts decide. Another example of that is the am I saying it right, Kelly? The cameras on our school buses, right? Certainly, jurisdictions across the state and others have had an issue with people just flying past school buses. as they pick up kids to go to school. So what happens, right? The stop sign comes out, the bus arm comes out, kids are loaded onto a bus and get off. But what happens is people just continue to fly by. So putting cameras on buses to capture individuals who fly by, again, it's not trying to look inside a vehicle, it's not trying to be intrusive, but what is that license plate of the individual that drives by? That's important. We're not saying, it doesn't say that, oh, this is the individual who drove, there's no facial recognition, it's pitching on that vehicle, that license plate that drives past that bus. So that has been beneficial, and some of the information comes forward is you can pay that ticket off, or you can go to court and contest it. However, knowing that those cameras catch that, if you ran the bus, and when you get the ticket in the mail, right, for the address where that license plate belongs to, you also get a video image of that vehicle or that license plate passing a bus with a stop sign out, right? It's the same as you would go through a toll. If you run a toll, right, we're not doing facial recognition. We're not trying to look at what's going on inside the vehicle. We're not looking at kind of what watch somebody has. We're picking up on a license plate that goes through a toll booth that doesn't pay a fine, that doesn't pay the required amount to pass the toll, right? So those things have been beneficial. So as we move on, before I even go into some of the other topics that we're going to touch base on today, I totally get the concern about Big Brother, about, well, you're capturing this information and storing it somewhere in data in some secret file. That's not what we're trying to do. What I'm trying to do as the chief of police in this department is utilize technology to make our communities safe, to utilize technology to bring the best cases we can to a jury, to a judge, to present to our Commonwealth attorney, but to make the quality of life in our and I should say, and to investigate, to help determine or understand or give us an avenue of an individual that we might want to question about a particular crime that's occurred. So let's talk about shoplifting. Individual goes into whatever store it might be and shoplifts, right? First question an officer will ask is there video footage in your business? Yes, there's video footage coming in, there's video footage coming out, there's video footage in the back corner. So we'll go back and look at that footage. So we go to court and an officer says, was called to this particular establishment, and the manager says this individual stole a bottle of wine. And the suspect, the individual charged, says, no, I didn't. And the manager says, I saw him. And he says, no, I didn't steal it. And, oh, wait, here is the camera footage from inside the store that clearly shows someone reaching up, grabbing a bottle, putting it in their jacket pocket, and walking out. That's hard to get around. That footage is not to be intrusive. It's not to capture what kind of alcohol people are looking at. It's to capturing an individual who has taken an item from a business that didn't belong to them. So we try to use that just trying to paint the picture, set the mindset of where we're at in law enforcement, where I'm at as the chief here in Newport News, and how we're using technology. We have a lot of overdoses. Some might even call it an epidemic, of whether it's cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, individuals that experiment with drugs and have overdoses. We have individuals that are taken to the hospital and dropped off, and then the car drives away. And then that individual may later succumb to whatever substance in their system. It's beneficial to know what happened. So if I'm driving a Dodge Charger and I put someone out and set them at the side of the hospital and then drive off, I'm not saying that I did anything for that person except leave them there, but I haven't done, there's nothing pointing to me as I've done something criminal on any type of abuse, alcohol, substance abuse, drug abuse, fentanyl, cocaine. But it does give me an individual. This license plate comes back to Steve Drew. I want to knock on Steve Drew's door and ask him, what does he know about this situation? It's not saying Steve Drew's guilty of anything. It just gives us an avenue to investigate. So as we take that a little bit further, let's talk about schools. If there's a threat that's made about a school, whether someone just makes a Facebook post or tells some friends, I'm going to do something at the school tomorrow, any particular school, it doesn't matter which one. What we traditionally have done is we send officers, maybe 5 or 6 officers to that school to make sure everything is okay. However, as parents come to school each morning and they see officers there, that creates an anxiety, an uncertainty, a concern. What's going on? What happened? Why is this going on? What might have occurred today? Why are officers here? Being able to have camera footage of the parking lot, I could keep officers on the outer perimeter and watch those cameras to make sure that there's nothing going on. And if something does appear to be suspicious, if there does something appear to be suspicious, then then I can have officers respond to a particular area. So it's better coordination. And we have the ability to take a snapshot and send that to officers' cell phones so that they know what they're responding to. And that's all about keeping our children safe. It's all about a better response, a safety, and working with our school system. If we have a situation that occurs inside a school, it is much better, instead of just sending officers in and trying to find where the situation is occurring at, but if we're able to pull up camera footage, we can tell officers where the individuals are at, what they might have or what they might be doing, what their actions are, what they might have in their possession. It's not about looking to see what the schools are serving for lunch in the cafeteria that afternoon. It's all about safety. It's all about safety and trying to prevent something bad from happening. We're not just taking pictures of hallways and individuals and putting them in a file. We're not doing facial recognition. We're responding to an incident and trying to use footage, camera footage, video footage to respond better and respond quicker. Now, some situations that we've had at our high schools here, I've been at all 3 of those. And I saw panic in parents' faces. And if we have the ability to use a camera system, video footage, to render aid quicker or to get to a situation quicker, that is going to make parents feel better. We are not looking at, it is not our intent to capture footage and just watch what people are doing. It is to make things safer, a response safer for the officers, a quicker response for individuals, a safer response for citizens and businesses, right, in our area. So when we talk about cameras in schools, it is all about keeping our students safe. It's all about keeping children safe. If I might, a lot of individuals today have Ring doorbell cameras, right? Individuals have that to protect their home or to see when packages are delivered or who might come to their front door. But it's all, or who's knocking at the door they can see. Even if they're not at home, you can go in and what time was something delivered, what time, who was on my porch, what happened out front as that camera's activated. So if there was a traffic accident or some type of assault or some type of a crime that occurred in front of that street, in front of that particular house with that camera footage from Ring doorbell, we would go and have that conversation with someone who lived there and ask, could we see that footage? Could we take a look and see if you captured this? Or, God forbid, there's a shooting somewhere and in a 10, 15 second time frame, a vehicle drives off and they had to drive past 3 houses that had Ring doorbells. Would it be beneficial to capture that vehicle or to know what kind of vehicle we're looking for, to put out a broadcast? Officers, we're looking for a red Camaro that just, nothing against Camaros, but a red Camaro that just drove past the street after this shooting. Oh, I've got one right here. Do you have any more information? I see that vehicle right now. Or a vehicle matching that description. And now imagine that person injured is your family member, your friend. That's why I want us to just take a step back and think about that for a minute. Would I want, if something happened to me, to my property, to my friend, to my family member, would I want camera footage or video footage to capture that? Would I want, if my friend, a loved one was in need, if camera and technology were beneficial in getting me aid quicker, would I be okay with that? But still, in the caveat, I understand concerns. We're going to talk about that in a second. Gunshot detection or shot spotter is something that we've had for about 3.5 years now. Now, what gunshot spotter, gunshot detection does, it picks up sound vibrations. The sensors are placed in elevated areas that capture gunshots, the number, and oftentimes the make, the type of firearm. And what it does is in a particular area, 3-mile area, it triangulates and tells us pretty pinpoint accuracy where those shots came from. Now, some of the early questions I got when we went to gunshot detection here was, well, you're listening to conversations on the street. It's not the case at all. We're not listening to any conversations. And right now, Benjamin, I appreciate that, man. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you for tuning in today. But what happens, I'll give you 3 scenarios. 1, 100 block, 200 block, 300 block. If I'm in the 300 block and a person in the 300 block calls and says, I hear gunshots, officers will go where? To the 300 block. But sound travels. The gunshots could have came from the 100 block. But if we get a call from the 300 block, we're driving to the 300 block. We may drive right past the 100 block where the situation happened and keep going 2 more blocks down. And then we have a conversation with someone, and then we start driving around the area. But we could have drove right past. The second is, if there's gunshots in a particular neighborhood and nobody calls, no one calls, we may not find someone that's injured, or residents who live in that area, in that community, that neighborhood, oh man, we heard 5 or 6 gunshots and the police don't even drive down here. They may not care about what goes on in our community. And some of that is, well, somebody else will call, or what really concerns me is, well, we hear that all the time, it's no big deal. It is a big deal. Just a couple months ago, there was a shooting about 9:30 in the evening, right in the middle of the street. Shot spotter activation occurred, 5 shots. Officers responded, and there were no shell casings. So, where are the shell casings at? Did shot spotter get it wrong? We go back and look, nope, triangulates right there. Could it have been a revolver that doesn't eject a shell casing? So officers got out and walked. Because of the shot spotter activation, they got out and walked, and about a block away, blood trail, about a block away, they found an individual in an alley who had suffered gunshot wound. Now, regrettably, he had succumbed to his injuries. He had passed. He was deceased. It was a homicide in our city. But if we had not got out and walked that area, if we hadn't had an idea of where those shots were fired at, that individual may not have been found until early in the morning, maybe someone out for a walk or walking their dog. And what if that individual was still alive when we got there and we could render aid to him? However, if we didn't know about it or hear about it or find out about it until 7, 8 hours later in the morning, think of how that could result. Now think about that if that's your family member or your friend. And guess how many calls we got about that shooting? 0. Not one person called. For whatever reason, maybe someone else thought somebody else was going to call. It's about 9:30 in the evening. Maybe everyone was asleep and didn't hear the rounds fired. But that's the type of thing that gun detection can help us with. It also can help us with going back and recovering evidence. The shots came from here. Well, this is kind of a wooded area, but whoa, wait, we go back here and we found 3 or 4 shell casings. We put them in another piece of technology called a NIBIN system, which primarily, for our purposes, looks at ballistics, right? And tells us what type of firearm, what if that firearm or those casings could have been used in any type of other shooting that happened somewhere in our community, in our city, or in another city, Hampton, or Norfolk, or Virginia Beach, or Portsmouth, or somewhere else, and vice versa. So it's all about investigations. Another example of what ShotSpotter does for us. I can probably count at least 9 or 10 times that I know off the top of my head where an individual said, I suffered a gunshot wound. I got shot in the leg, in my calf, or in the top of my foot. Well, where did it happen at? Well, it happened in this area. And, well, we didn't get any gunshot response. We didn't get any detection. We didn't get any notification. We didn't get any calls. We don't find any crime scene. Oh, I was shot there. And as the conversation goes on, well, I accidentally shot myself, and I thought I would say that location because shootings happen there, and it's commonplace. So gunshot detection, ShotSpotter has allowed us to debunk claims about someone shooting at me or someone shot me, as opposed to I had a handgun, was loading it, unloaded, playing with it, and I shot myself by accident. The gunshot sensors, we don't determine where they go. We share our data with another entity that looks at where are you having gunfire, where are you having homicides by gunfire. And this is the area that we would recommend. Now, usually it's right around the same area that we're looking at. We know where the crimes are occurring, but it's an independent ShotSpotter will look at it independently and recommend the area. It's not about to pick up conversations. It's not about facial recognition. It is about responding to gunfire. And if you live in a community that has a lot of gunfire, I'm telling you, you want anything, any device we have that makes you feel safer. So sometimes when people talk about, oh, we were against gunshot detection, we're against some of this technology, another follow-up question I might ask them, are you experiencing that in your community? Do your children live in an area where gunshot happens more often? Might be a good question to ask. I'm going to take a break here. Good afternoon. Do you have any thoughts or experience with the use of software products for gun detection like Zero Eyes and Omelette? I'm very familiar with Zero Eyes. We've looked at that. That's something we've talked about and also with schools. I'm not sure of the other one. I don't know if it's kind of the same thing, but Zero Eyes is a device that kind of zeroes in on firearms. So if someone is walking, it might zero in on someone who has a firearm in their hand and would send us an alert right away. But we have looked at that and met with representatives of that group, and we've talked about that with schools as well. Kelly, what was one of the other ones? License plate. Let me talk about license plate readers. That's a lot of interest in license plate readers. So let's go back to if you run a toll. Not saying I ever have, but I might have got a picture of my vehicle about 8 years ago going through a toll booth. Man, that's me. So that cost me a lot more than the 70 cents that it would have the toll in, but I remember that. But I remember the picture. It had a picture of my vehicle and the license plate. It was clear. License plate readers are also placed in strategic locations to address either traffic, speeding, traffic accidents, or violence. When I say violence, I'm talking about violent crime, robberies, shootings, homicide. It is not facial recognition. It does not tell us who pulled a trigger. It does not tell us who committed a robbery. What it does tell us is a vehicle with this license plate was at a particular location where a license plate reader was established. We are not setting a database aside with a bunch of individuals' names and a bunch of vehicles. We're not setting data aside where it's stored in locked cabinets in a dark room. It's stored for a significant, certain limited time frame. When we go into a license plate reader system, we have to log in and explain and type in what we're looking for, why we're looking for it, who the person is that logged in, and a time frame. So here's an example. Oftentimes a situation happens, whether let's say it's a robbery. I was at this particular location, an individual pulled up in a white truck. He got out, pointed a firearm at me, and he robbed me of my watch and my wallet, and he left. Well, did you see the license plate? Well, or could you describe the individual? No, he had a mask on. Could you describe the vehicle? It was a white pickup truck, and it had, I just remember seeing the letters XL on it as it drove off. So we can put that information out. However, we can also put that into a license plate reader query. Chief Steve Drew, investigating a robbery that occurred at such and such location at such and such time and such date. I'd like to look at, for a white vehicle with a license plate that has an X and an L in it during the 30 seconds before this time and 30 seconds after. And it will show you that vehicle. It will show you a white truck and give you the full license plate of that vehicle. And it will also tell you of any other camera, flock camera, license plate reader where that truck is or what it has passed. Well, sir, which way did it go? Well, it went to the intersection. I don't know if it went north or south on Jefferson. The license plate reader clearly shows that it went north. Now we're closing our time frame. Instead of looking south and north, we're moving our resources to the north. Oh, we have another license plate reader that caught that same vehicle because we typed it into the system in connection with a robbery. We caught it 2 blocks up. Oh, and it's parked right here in the apartment complex. or it's parked right here in the 400 block or the 7,000 block, and officers respond. Now, they may stop that vehicle and someone be sitting inside. There may not be anyone there at all. But there may be a light, that license plate is registered to an address where it allows us to knock on the door and have a conversation. Sir, can you tell us, ma'am, can you tell us who had your vehicle, who was driving it during this time frame? If someone says, my vehicle's been parked here all day long, then we know that's not accurate. If there's an individual inside, and as we walk to the, sir, we were doing an investigation, your vehicle came up, and there's a watch and wallet on the front seat, that may give it, we're still not saying that's the individual who did the robbery, but it gives us an idea of an investigation. And I'm just talking about a robbery. God forbid it's someone who's been hurt in an accident and someone left a hit and run and left the scene. Someone's been shot or injured, or God forbid there's been a homicide. We also update stolen vehicles, right? So if you get up in the morning and you go out and your car is gone, hey, this is my stolen vehicle. So years past, we used to do what we call hot sheets, and we would give an officer a list. We had 10 license plates on it of stolen vehicles. And the type. So in your patrolling, you would look for a vehicle, a white truck that had this license plate on it. And that's one way of doing it. But technology is so much more advanced now that in any of those license plate readers throughout the system, throughout the city, if that stolen vehicle, your car, drives past one of those license plate readers, it will send us an immediate alert. And we can send officers to that scene or that area. And we've probably recovered about 50 stolen vehicles so far this year just from license plate reader detection. That means giving someone family back their vehicle that's been stolen that officers may not find, that we're able to find much quicker. It's not about facial recognition. It doesn't say someone did this crime and you're under arrest for it. It is an investigative tool and a quicker response, and it decreases the timeline and increases safety, increases awareness about what we're responding to. Carrie, Chief, can you give me an estimate on how many cars have been past the school bus that has stopped? So, Ms. Cox, I will tell you, we get more of them occur in the northern part of the city than we're seeing in other places. But I can't give you an exact. We do track that. If I went back and pulled that up and looked at it, but I can certainly tell you for what's interesting to me is where are we seeing the most school bus camera violations, and that'd be in our northern part of the city. The roads are a little bit more narrow. We don't have the full medians there. They just have the lines, and I think sometimes people forget that if there is a median, you're okay to keep going north if you're on the opposite side of the street. But if there's no median, right, if it's just a painted line, then you got to stop. And I think that's part of the reason we see some of those violations. Kelly, I've talked a little bit about license plate readers. I've talked a little bit about ShotSpotter. Was there another one that I wanted to touch base on?
You wanted to talk a little about the Real-Time Crime Center and then maybe drones?
Yep. So we're going to do it in reverse order. So I want to talk about drones. Right now, the police department has a drone team. We're getting ready to have a drone vehicle. It's being outfitted. When I say drone vehicle, all that is screens inside of a van where the drone operators can monitor. Right now, what we use drones for in the police department is if we're looking for someone, a missing person, someone who may have wandered off in a grassy or wooded area, where I can put officers of lines and walk through, but I can do much more if I can put a drone up in the area that has infrared and a vision. As we fly it over that particular area, or landmass can cover so much more to see if we pick up anything or see anything. We can get aerial photos of a bad traffic accident. So, what was in this area? If a juror or the defense attorney says, well, couldn't this have been obstructed, or could that have been obstructed? Or if a common attorney says, well, this is the area you can see here, it lays out a very clear picture for a juror about what happened, or for a judge about what happened and where this incident occurred at. We'll use drones on SWAT missions, on fires, right? So let's talk fires first. If there's a bad fire and where can the firemen deploy from? We can't deploy from this side. As the drone looks down, there's more damage to this roof or this side. It's safer to go around to the back. Or this structure is safe on this side, but we're getting debris that's starting to blow over from this business onto the other. We need to react here. It's all about safety. The same thing on our SWAT missions or tactical missions. to being able to get an aerial view to make sure we know where all of our officers are, to make sure we have citizens out of the area where there's some type of tactical situation. It's all about safety, just like officers who have body-worn cameras, and we're able to turn those cameras on and we can watch them from another location. One of the things that we're looking at with drones, it is not to fly in and see what anybody's doing at their house. It's not to do any facial recognition. It's not to capture data and store it. But one of the things that we're looking at, there's a department in California and in Texas that are using drones as first responders. So if we have a violent crime, right, robbery with a handgun, we're not talking about people arguing, a robbery, a shooting, or a homicide, deploying the drone to that area and getting an aerial view that might give officers a quicker response, where to go, where that vehicle might be at, where that individual might be running from. Used to have, remember back in the days where you had helicopters that would fly around and visually look, or you would have fixed wing planes that will fly around, and the drone can be used as sort of that same way. That here's a stolen vehicle, we've captured it, and we have it on video right now, and the drone's following it. Or we've had a robbery and we've deployed a drone to that area that might get there 2 or 3 minutes quicker than an officer, or a minute quicker than those seconds matter. Where did that individual go? Or the individual took his sweatshirt off and now it's just standing on the street corner. That's the individual who committed the robbery. That's the individual who's firing the rounds up in the air. So we're only looking at that. We haven't gone there. But some people have talked about, well, is there any policy they can do? Just whoever. It's the same thing again. You have to record what we would document, what the drone's being deployed for. What was the time, the date, the location? Who was the one deploying the drone? How long was the drone up and how long was the drone back? It's not about just doing flights and looking at vehicles and buildings and people and establishments. It's all about responding to something critical incident that's occurred. And then it's important that we keep that in our policies and procedures that lay out what we're using this technology for, how it will be utilized. The last thing I want to touch base on, was it Lewis, Wednesday? The next academy starts at the end of August. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, before I get off here, we have an academy class of 20 that are set to graduate at the end of August. We have a class of 13 that will graduate in, I believe it is in November, and we're now hiring for the class that will start at the end of August. So if you're something you're interested in, we just had an all-day recruiting event last Saturday. We had about 20 people that showed up. So if you're interested, my friend, if you'll reach out to us, contact us at the department and get a background investigator to talk to you and about coming in. And actually, right before I came here, I just hired an individual to start our academy. We're going to bring him on board, pre-hire him, and get him here early. The last thing I want to talk about is a real-time crime center. So what that is what used to be for maybe a camera room. Now it's a real-time crime center that's very, very interactive. All the things that we just talked about, if we can bring those into one location, real-time crime center, to monitor and watch those things that occur. So if I'm much like a dispatcher, right? If I'm in a room and I get an alert of a stolen vehicle, I can go to that, pull it up on the screen, and I can start broadcasting to officers and tell them where that vehicle's at. The camera 1 picked it up here. It just passed camera 7. Oh, now it's parked in front of camera 19. This is where we need to move to. If there's a shooting or a robbery or a homicide, and we ask for camera footage, the Real-Time Crime Center has the ability to link in and attach to other cameras that are already out there, and to see if we go back 5 minutes before, 5 minutes after, and that time during, right, did it capture anything? We can take an image of that, right? Here's an individual who went to a particular business and threatened a business owner or a fast food chain with a firearm. If we can link into their camera system, take a picture of that, I can send that to officers on their cell phones, and if they see that individual, they're able to respond in a more tactical and strategic way, is just walking up to someone and not knowing that this is the person that just may have committed a robbery. It's not about facial recognition. It's not about digitally remastering. It's snapping an image. A lot of them that cameras are already out there, whether it's, we go back to Ring cameras, cameras that are on businesses, cameras that are on strip malls, cameras that might be around churches, right? And it's using that technology and bringing it all together. So the reason I wanted to talk a little bit about technology today is there's just been a lot of interest. I think there's a media outlet who's wanted to touch base with me about how many cameras we have and why. And it will be the same thing that I wanted to share with you today, is that it's all about making our community safer. It's trying to look at what technology is out there without being intrusive to anyone, very, very cognizant. And I've had questions from different organizations and groups, but I have to be honest. In those conversations, when we have the conversation, which sometimes we don't have, when we have the conversations, people seem to get it. Organizations seem to get it. We understand. Chief, we just want to make sure that this, we just want to make sure. And I'm telling you on this side, I totally understand that. I understand the concern of a big brother type thing. I understand the intrusiveness. Believe me, I totally get it. I'm all about privacy, but I'm also about protecting our community. And we're not collecting data and just storing it and going back and going through it and sharing it with people and different entities. We're not doing that. What we're looking for is to deter crime, respond to crime and incidents, to keep officers safe, to locate individuals that may be missing or injured or have wandered off,